private jailbreak news update, specifically a PS5 update here in this video. All the topics are PS5 related for the most part. So first of all, we can see here we got the release of the new etaHEN project. YouTube jailbreak by etaHEN. So this is a userland exploit, a userland code execution that uses the YouTube application as the entry point, which can then be used, of course, to eventually chain it with a kernel exploit so that we can jailbreak up to the latest jailbreakable firmwares using the YouTube application instead of the previous methods. So this should open up digital edition and consoles without a working disk drive to be able to run the jailbreak. Not only that, the people that have to jailbreak on firmwares above 7.61 currently have to use the Lua exploit with those expensive Japanese-only games that need to be used to load the jailbreak. So that will hopefully become a thing of the past if this can get fully chained with the Labs kernel exploit. Now, at the moment, this is just the initial release. It does state that it's currently in beta and not ready for end users due to instability. Also says here in the notes, the project is currently in beta and experiences stability issues. It's not recommended for general use at this time. So at the moment, this is more of just a test release. So you can kind of test the exploit out. So it can be restored on retail consoles by installing a backup file that you just copy to the root of a USB and then drive. Use the backup and restore options to restore that backup on the PlayStation 5. And that will get the YouTube application installed with the exploit on it so that when you run the YouTube application, it runs the userland exploit. But if you're on a console that already has a pre-existing jailbreak, you don't have to reset your console by recovering a backup file because you can just install the raw exploit file itself, which is inside this folder here. We have this splash.html, which is the actual file that contains the modified code to run the exploit. So all you need to do is copy that over to your PS5 using FTP. With an existing jailbreak, you need to install the 1.03 version of the YouTube application, which you can do by copying it to a USB and installing it with the debug settings package installer. Then you can just FTP over to the PS5. And when you're running the YouTube application, you'll be able to access the file in the sandbox location. And in there, you can navigate to that same file that you need to replace and simply swap out that file with the one from the YouTube jailbreak project. You do have to give the directory permission to be able to read and write to that directory, and then you'll be able to swap out that file. But I've done a full guide already showing the setup process, which I'll leave linked down in the video description. So that is what we've got and there. If you want to see this project continue, maybe consider leaving a donation to the developer right here. So I'll leave a link to that down in the video description. Other applications are also being looked at to see if they may also be viable. And one of the other candidates appears to be the Netflix application. It has the same characteristics as the YouTube application, where you're able to install and run the retail version without requiring a license. So it can be installed and loaded on any PS5. And of course, there's lots of older versions of the application available on Prospero patches, which are likely to have a lot more vulnerabilities. And the Netflix application is known to have quite a few critical bugs in older versions. And one of the ones that's been looked at the moment is CVE 20244.70, which can leave systems open to remote code execution attacks. So you can see here the vulnerability arises from the way Genie handles file uploads via the API, leading to a path traversal attack. So if one of the older Netflix versions happens to be vulnerable to these kinds of exploits, we might be able to get a similar userland exploit set up on the Netflix application. And there may also be other media applications that could also be decent candidates for an exploit like this. So we could end up having lots of different userland options for exploiting the console through all of these different media applications. So anyway, that's what we've got going on there. So moving on from that. So one of the other developments is that one of the flows. HackerOne bug bounty reports. The $5,000 report has now been disclosed. So just a day ago this got disclosed, but it is an older bug that was reported several months back. So if we go to this here, we can see it is a Blu-ray disc. Java sandbox escape via to vulnerabilities. So there's two implementations of IXC inter-XLET communication in BDJ. One is org.dvb.io.exc, and the other is com.sun.let.exc. By exploiting to vulnerabilities in each of the implementations, it is possible to disable the security manager and escape the Java sandbox. So both vulnerabilities are documented here in the summary by PlayStation. And then we have the impact is native code execution in BDJ. Blu-ray Java, so that's what we've got there. Now again, this is old. So if we take a look, we can see the report was disclosed back in July 16th of 2025. So this was likely patched in the 12.50 to update for the PS4. And if it pertains to the PS5, it's likely that this might just be PS4 only, in which case it's just 12.50 to that has likely patched this. Or of course it may be affecting the PS5, in which case it would be 11.60 that would have patched if it does affect the PS5 as well. Because we can see here from PS4 Dev Wiki that 12.52 was released on July 9th. And then of course 11.60 for the PS5 was released on July 15th, which is around the time that this report was made. Because typically, again, the reports get closed once the update has already been released, and they've confirmed that it patches the vulnerability. That is when the report is then closed and the bounty is awarded. So it would be before the bounty gets awarded that it would have been patched. So that would kind of put it around 12.52 for the PS4. That would have patched and 11.60 in the PS5. So that's what we've got there from the flow. And the Blu-ray exploits that we're using to jailbreak right now, the PS4 on 12.02. We know that was patched in 12.52 and works up to 12.50. So it looks like the flow was already well aware and reported them to Sony. Back in April of 2025, something interesting here is that the flow just casually dropped this patch file on GitHub that seems to fix a long-standing issue that we've had with the old bypasser exploit on the PS5, which was the first public hypervisor exploit released by Spectre. So this hypervisor exploit only works on older PS5 We're talking 1.x and to .x firmware. So one of the issues that I identified in a video where I covered the bypasser exploit initially was that whenever you try to load a fake package with bypasser running, it would take a long time to actually launch the application. Much longer than it takes even to launch a fake package using KStuff on higher firmwares that don't have a full hypervisor exploit. Which is strange because the whole idea is that if you hypervisor exploit, it should generally be faster at loading things and running things than KStuff, because KStuff has a performance impact. Whereas if you have a full hypervisor defeat the idea was that it should run better with a full hypervisor exploit. But we weren't seeing that whenever we launched a fake package file. It would take much longer to actually load using the bypasser exploit. This PS4 fake package, we get Please wait that comes up after launching, and it can take you 15 seconds for certain games to load, which is much slower than you would typically expect. With this patch being dropped by the flow, this seems to have fully fixed this problem, because if I take this modified test buildup Hypervisor that has this new patch implemented by the flow, then we can see that when I go to launch the game, it pretty much launches almost instantaneously within a second or two. The game is running, and if we compare that, of course, side by side to the old version without the patch, we can see the insane difference in loading times when loading these fake packages with the bypasser exploit enabled. So it's pretty nice that the flow just dropped to fix this long-standing issue with this bypasser exploit. So now if you happen to be on a 1.x or to .x firmware, and if you're on a 1.x you pretty much can't run anything because it's such an old firmware. But if you're on a then your PS for fake packages, and I suppose other games, should run a lot faster now than did previously. Even faster than you would get typically with KStuff now, on higher firmwares. So that's a very welcome patch that has been released. Even though, of course, it won't apply to many people, because there's very few people who actually have on consoles an old enough firmware to run the bypasser exploit. So moving on from that, we also have some updates to etaHEN from Mr. Lightning Mods showing himself. Here now available for testing. The FPS counter is coming in the next test build. We have a new game overlay menu that was implemented in the latest test release of etaHEN. So this is not available on the GitHub repo yet. That version is still to 0.3b, but you can get the latest test builds from the package zone Discord server. Just go into that Discord server, go into the etaHEN public test, and if you select the pinned section in the top right-hand corner, you'll get the latest test build that you can download of etaHEN. Simply swap out your current etaHEN version with that version, and you'll be able to access the new features when you load etaHEN on the console. So if you go into the debug settings or etaHEN inside toolbox, the settings section, you now have the game overlay menu, and this gives you the GPU section. CPU section show all CPU core usage and their RAM section. So GPU, CPU, and RAM section are enabled by default. So whenever you launch a game or application, in the top left-hand corner, you will get the stats for the GPU, CPU, which will give you the temperature as well as the current utilization of the CPU and GPU, as well as the RAM usage of how much memory is being used on the console at that time. And you can also enable the show all CPU core usage, which will then give you the percentage utilization of each CPU core. Although it does take up more screen space, which is probably why that option is disabled by default. And once we get a full release, we'll probably be able to move it to different parts of the screen. Maybe make it bigger or smaller, as well as the FPS counter, which is coming in the next test build, which is not available in this version yet, but we'll also be able to show FPS on our games as well. So that is something that is coming. We also have the KStuff menu that's implemented in the latest test builds of the etaHEN. So instead of having the option just to pause and unpause to improve performance, there is now a full KStuff menu. And if you enter that menu inside the settings page, you still have the option to pause KStuff, but you also now have the option to download the latest version of Stuff from Echo Stretch's GitHub repo. So that way it will swap out the inbuilt version of KStuff, and it will load the one that you download from the repo instead. So any new KStuff can be applied to etaHEN just by downloading them from the repo. Using this option, then the next time you load etaHEN, it will update and use the latest version of KStuff instead of an older version that is built into that version of etaHEN, so that you don't have to wait for a new etaHEN to get the latest KStuff features. So that's something that's very handy. You also have the option there to remove the version that is downloaded from GitHub if you want to revert back to the inbuilt version inside etaHEN. And you also have the option to not load KStuff at all, so that if you want to just load the etaHEN toolbox. You know, if KStuff doesn't support your firmware yet, for instance, like 10.0, but you want to be able to access the etaHEN like the features, toolbox and the overlays and all of that kind of stuff. Well, in that case, you can disable KStuff completely, so it will just load the toolbox. And even though you won't be able to load anything, you'll still have access to the cheats and the other etaHEN features. So that is something that is also built in there too. So very, very nice to see these improvements, and that they're publicly available if you join the Package Zone Discord server to download the latest build. And finally, the GTA 5 private server is now getting PS5 support. Now, in my last news update, one incorrectly stated that the PS5 was already supported, and that was based on my initial video tutorial on how to set up the GTA 5 private server when it first launched. It used a different install method that did allow it to work with the PS5 and the PS4. However, it later updated to using a golden plugin to load the private server instead, which then prevented it from working on the PS5. So for a while, it's only been available on the PS4. However, it is now properly getting PS5 support. It is still using the PS4 version of GTA 5 on the PlayStation 5. But it's now been turned into an etaHEN plugin, which can then allow you to get it up and running on the PS5. So that you can play online with GTA 5 using the LSO Los Santos online private server, which is now free to play. And you can now set that up on the PS5 with this pre-alpha version, supporting the PS5 setup, the etaHEN plugin, and the authentication token on your PS5 and then when you load the PS4 version of GTA 5, currently version 1.53, you'll be able to get connected to the private server and play online with GTA 5 on your PlayStation 5. So that's something that's also been added. So anyway, that's all I've got here for this video. So hope you guys enjoyed this one or found the information useful. Please leave a like and subscribe, and once again,